Alright guys, here we are back with chapter 29. So, Susan has just finished her speech at the contest, and now we're going to find out what happened. So, chapter 29, sorry, I have to move my sticky. Chapter 29, page 157. She won. And as she had said she would. The silver plate they gave her twinkled like a starburst in a galaxy of flashing cameras. 2 TV crews washed her in lights and interviewed her backstage. Strangers mobbed her, citizens of Phoenix gushing, telling her they'd been coming to the contest for years and had never heard anything like it. School children thrust programs in her face for autographs, and every parent wanted her for their daughter, every teacher for a student. She was so happy, and she was so proud. She yelped and cried when she saw us. She hugged each of us in turn, and I thought she would squeeze the breath out of me. Back at the hotel, everyone already seemed to know. The doorman, the desk manager, the people in the lobby, the elevator. Suddenly, she had this magical, wonderful power. Whoever laid eyes on her smiled, and the English language dwindled to a single word, repeated over and over. Congratulations! We floated around the block to burn off our excess energy. Back at the hotel, we were invited into the nightclub, even though Susan and I were underage. We drank ginger ales and ordered jalapeno poppers, and we were all danced to country and western band while Susan's face beamed on the late news from TV above the bar. The dance floor was the only place where she did not carry her silver plate. First thing next morning, there she was, sliding under the door of my hotel room, her picture on the front page of the Arizona Republic, which is a newspaper. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at it, pride welling in me. I read the story. It called her speech mesmerizing, hypnotic, mysteriously touching. I pictured folded morning papers tossed from cars, landing in driveways all over Micah. We all met for breakfast at the buffet, and people stared and nodded and smiled silently lips said, "Congratulations," across the restaurant. We headed home in a 2-car caravan. A caravan is when one car follows another car. So they're 2-car caravan, right? The teacher's driving and her parents are driving. For a while, Susan was her usual chatty self. She put the silver plate on the front seat beside Mr. McShane, and she told him it would ride next to him for 10 whole minutes, and then he could touch it all he wanted. This was his reward, she said, for telling her about the moas. As soon as the 10 minutes was up, she took back the plate. As we drew nearer to town, the chatter subsided and finally stopped. We rode the last miles in silence. She took my hand, and the nearer we came, the harder she squeezed. When we hit the outskirts of town, she turned to me and said, "Do I look okay?" I told her she looked great. She didn't seem to believe me. She held up the silver plate and studied her reflection. She turned to me again and looked at me for some time before she spoke. "I've been thinking. This is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to hold on to the plate myself, okay?" I nodded. Until they lift me onto their shoulders. Then I give it to you. Understand?" I nodded. "So stay next to me, every second. Crowds can separate you, you know. They do that, okay?" I nodded. "Okay." Her hand was hot and sweating. We drove past a man in his driveway, and he was dipping a large broom-like brush into a pail and painting the asphalt with black sealer. He was bent intently to do his work in the noonday, meaning the hot sun. And somehow I knew at that moment that what could happen, I could see it. I knew at that moment what would happen. I could see it. I wanted to shout to Mr. McShane, "No, don't turn! Don't go there!" But he did turn. He turned, and there was the school in front of us. And never in my life have I seen a place so empty. No banners, no people, no cars. "Probably around back," Mr. McShane said. His voice was hoarse. "The parking lot." We swung around back to the parking lot, and yes, there was a car and another car, and people, 3 of them, shading their eyes and watching us. 2 of them were teachers. The other was a student, Dory Dilson. She stood apart from the teachers, alone in the black shimmering sea of asphalt. As we approached, she held up a sign, a huge cardboard sign bigger than the basketball backboard. Whew, I can't read. She set the sign on the edge and propped it up, erasing herself. The red painted letters said, "Way to go, Susan. We're proud of you." The car stopped in front of it. All that was left to see of Dory Dilson were two sets of fingers holding the sides of the sign. We were close enough now to see that the sign was trembling, and I knew that behind it Dory was crying. There was no confetti, no kazoos, nothing cheered, not even a mockingbird. Okay, chapter 30. Because what did they expect to see there? Right? They expected, or Susan expected, that there would be this huge party and celebration for her and everyone would be excited. But actually what happened is nobody showed up. Nobody cared that she won. So let's see what happens. Chapter 30, page 161. As we stood, stunned and silent in front of Dory Dilson's sign, Susan's parents came and retrieved her from Mr. McShane's car. As in all things, they did not appear especially surprised or emotional over what was happening. Susan seemed in a trance, like she was quiet and confused. She sat beside me, staring vacantly at the sign through the windshield. Her hand was no longer holding mine. I groped for words, but I could not find them. When her parents came, she allowed herself to be led away. As she got out of the car, the silver plate slid from her lap and rang like a dying bell against the asphalt. Her father picked it up. I thought he would take it, but instead he leaned into the back seat where I sat with a strange smile and gave it to me. I did not see her for the rest of the weekend. By Monday, she was Stargirl again. Floor-length skirt and ribbons in her hair, just like that. She went from table to table at lunchtime, passing out happy-face cookies. She even gave one to Hillary Kimball. Hillary took off her shoe and used it like a hammer to smash the cookie on her table. Wow, Hillary's a mean girl. Anyway, sorry. Stargirl strolled among us, strumming her ukulele and asking for a request. Cinnamon perched on her shoulder. He was strapped onto a tiny toy ukulele. She made her voice squeaky and kept her lips from moving, as if it was Cinnamon who were serenading her. Dory Dilson, bless her, stood and applauded. She clapped. She was the only one. I was too stunned, too shocked to join her, and too cowardly, too afraid, and angry, and not wanting to show approval for her return to Stargirl. Most of the students did not even look, did not even seem to listen. At the bell, we left the lunchroom. I looked back, and the tables were littered with cookies, right? People just left their cookies from Stargirl. Walking with her after school that day, I said, "I guess you're giving up, huh?" She looked at me. Giving up? On what? On being popular, on being, how could I say it? She smiled. Normal? I shrugged. Yes, she said firmly. Yes? I'm answering your question. The answer is yes. I'm giving up on trying to be popular and normal. Her face and body language did not seem to match her words. She looked cheery and perky. So did Cinnamon, perched on her shoulder. Don't you think that maybe you should back off a little? I said. Don't come on so strong. She smiled at me, and she reached out and brushed the tip of my nose with her fingertip. Excuse me. Because we live in a world of them, right? You told me that once. We stared at each other. She kissed me on the cheek and walked away. She turned and said, "I know you're not going to ask me to the Ocotillo Ball, and it's okay. Must be a dance at school." She gave me her smile of infinite kindness and understanding, the smile I had seen her aim at so many other needy souls, and in that moment, I hated it. I hated her. That very night, as if we were playing a scripted role, Kevin called me and said, "So, who are you taking to the Ocotillo Ball?" I dodged. "Who are you taking?" "I don't know," he said. "I don't either." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Not Stargirl?" "Not necessarily," I said. "You trying to tell me something?" What would I want to tell you? I thought you were a 2. I thought there was no question. So why are you asking? I said and hung up. In bed that night, I became more and more uncomfortable as the moonlight crept up my sheet. I did something I had never done before. I pulled down the shade, like his curtain. In my dreams, the old man in the mall bench raised a wobbly head and croaked, "How dare you forgive me?" The next morning, there was a new item on the plywood roadrunner and a sheet of paper. At the top it said, "Sign up here to join new musical group, the Ukadukes. No experience necessary." There were 2 numbered columns for names, 40 in all. By the end of the day, all 40 were filled in with names such as Minnie Mouse and Darth Vader and the Swamp Thing. The principal's name was there too, and Wayne Parr and Dory Dilson. "Did you see?" said Kevin. "Somebody wrote in Parr's name." We were in the studio control room. Right, Wayne Parr's like the cool guy at school. So they think it's a joke, just like Minnie Mouse. We were in the studio control room. It was May, and our hot seats were over for the year. But on some days, we still gravitated to the studio after school. I said. He stepped up to the blank monitor, and studied his reflection. "So, I didn't see your name on the list." "Nope." "You don't want to be a Yukaduke?" "I guess not." We fiddled with the equipment for a while. Kevin walked out onto the stage, and he flipped a switch. His mouth moved, but I couldn't hear him. He held a soft pad of a headphone against my ear. His voice seemed to come from another world. "She's turning goofy again, isn't she? Worse than ever." I stared at him through the glass, and I put down the headphone and walked away. I understood what he was doing. He had decided that it was now okay to say bad things about Stargirl. Permission to do so must have come from my behavior. Apparently, the first to read me was Stargirl herself. I still felt the sting from her remark about the Ocotillo ball. Was I that obvious? Classrooms, hallways, courtyards, and lunchroom were on page 165. Everywhere I went, I heard her disregard, mocked and slurred. Her attempt to become popular, to be more like them, had been a total failure. If anything, they detested her more now, and they were more vocal about it around me. Or was I just listening better? She and Dory Dilson, the only Ukadukes, did a duet in the courtyard one day after school. Stargirl strummed the ukulele, and they both sang Blue Hawaii. Clearly, they had been practicing, and they were very good. They were also very ignored. By the end of the song, they were the only 2 left in the courtyard. Next day, they were there again. This time, they wore sombreros, which are the big, huge Mexican hats. And they sang Mexican songs, like Salito Lindo, Vaya con Dios, my darling. I stayed inside the school. I was afraid to walk on past them, as if they weren't there. I was equally afraid to stand and listen. I peeked from a window. Stargirl was doing her best imitation of a flamenco, which is a type of dance. The click of castanets came through the window pane. Students walked past, and most of them not even glancing at her. I saw Wayne Parr and Hillary Kimball go past, Hillary laughing out loud, and Kevin and the basketball guys. I realize now that shunning would never end, and I know what I should do, and I knew what I should do. I should go out there and stand in front of them and applaud. I should show Stargirl and the world that I wasn't like the rest of them, and that I appreciated her, and that I celebrated her, page 166, and her insistence on being herself. But I stayed inside. I waited until the last of the students had left the courtyard, and Stargirl and Dory were performing for no one. To my surprise, they went on and on. It was too painful to watch. I left school by a different door. All right, guys. We're almost done. We have 2 more recordings left to do. So please go onto Teams and check out your questions on there. All right, bye, guys.